My graphic froze. Okay, we'll make that go away. Hello. Good morning, everybody. I think it's working. It looks like it's working. Oh man, the video is like really choppy though. That's probably because we're doing the NDI thing, and we've got DJD42 here coming in with us via Skype. So let's do a little audio test there. Can we hear you, Diana?
Good morning. Hello. How are you?
Cool. Looks like
Good
everything's
morning.
working.
Hello. How are
Everybody
you?
can hear us out there okay, I hope. And yeah, well, you know, it's hard to tell until we see things come on up in the chat there. But thank you all for joining us this morning. I see the chat is beginning to populate. Tans Machina is with us, and that's a good thing because Brian sent me a note in Facebook about something that I would like to talk about during the show today. Semiel. Oh, thank you for letting us know that the sound is coming through. That's good to know. The video is definitely a little choppy. Would it be better if I stop the stream and then try to restart the stream, or should we go ahead and continue with it just being kind of choppy on the video? I'll let you all decide. What do you think? What do you think, Diana?
Either one. I'm good.
Yeah,
Either
I'm willing to
one.
go with it.
I'm good.
Samuel says
I'm good
run
with
with it. All
restarting the
right.
stream.
So looks like
that.
at least we have another vote for run with it, and I'm with you on that. It doesn't really matter. But yeah, so you know, speaking of Tans Machina there, as I said, I did get a message. So just to kind of get us started here. Oh, you know what? Before I'm discombobulated now, man. The video threw me off. So this time we have good audio and bad video. Last time we had good video and bad audio. It's always something when we're doing these things, isn't it, my friends? Isn't it? No, it's not going to be a dance special. DJ Bobby Hash with us. Good to see you. Okay, so things that we've got going on in the near future, which of course your hostess with the mostess, Diana, will let you know all of these good things in the chat there. So of course we're doing Musically Minded on Sundays now, which you know because you're here. And on Wednesday, we've got an artist spotlight on MTV TV with Daniel Graves, Aesthetic Perfection. We are super excited to do that. We just talked to him on Thursday, and I've got a lot of cutting to do over the next couple of days because he's a great person to talk to, as I'm sure you may have guessed. He's got a lot to say, so I've got a lot of editing to do. On Saturday nights, we do the live DJ sets right here on twitch.tv/Addambombb, which, of course, if you are any place else, come on over here, ADDAMBOMBB, spell it right, you'll find us. And this coming Saturday, we've got a spooky New Year's celebration. DJ Loki is going to be joining us for that one. And in 2 weeks, the first retro rumpus of the year, Syrinx is going to be joining us for that one. So we've got a lot of good stuff coming up, and I hope you'll join us for that. And now to get into Musically Minded, we do have a couple of cool things on the topic list, but as I said, I was very glad to see Tans Machina joining us early here because Brian sent me this nice note in Facebook, and he said, thank you for that tip about rotating the circle of fifths downwards for goth clubs. Which, yeah, you know, to talk real quick about the key thing, there's a wonderful tool out there. I didn't mention it during the last show, but there's a wonderful tool out there. It's the Camelot system. It's called Mixed in Key. And if you Google Mixed in Key, it's probably the first thing that will come up. And it analyzes your tracks, and you can set it to tag them so that, you know, it adds the tempo and the key What it does is it uses a numbering system for key, though. So the Camelot system is based on the circle of fifths, which we were talking about some last week. Um, but it has a numbering system that makes it, how do I say this? The numbering system is related to the circle of fifths, but it's got its own way of expressing it, I guess, is probably the best way to put it. Like, you're probably not going to learn your circle of fifths by using the number system, although you can set it to do traditional key as well. That said, what it does is, so say that the key is assigned as 10A or something, then you know that if you have another song that is in 10A, that it's going to be in it has going to have the same root anyway. And so, you know, the next one up would be your 11A, and then the one after that would be 12A, and those are all still nicely within the parameters of how the Camelot system works. And so it's kind of like, you know, if you go up the numbers, you're rising, and if you go down the numbers, you're deepening. The caution that I want to say about that is that, first of all, two things might be in the same key and not sound good together because they're using different notes in the key, or because the progression it has the notes in places where they don't work that well together or whatever. And that sometimes things that like, according to the Camelot system, you know, there are some things that it's like the Camelot system would have you sort of tend to avoid, and some of those things, if you do them, can actually be really great mixes if you've got the right notes, you know, or the right drone or something in the mix. Because keys, root notes are one thing, and the notes that are used in a sequence are kind of another. Like, you know, there's a bunch of choices in an octave, at least 8, and in a key, and just because something is in a key doesn't necessarily mean that it's using the notes that are most complementary to each other in two different songs. And just because something doesn't line up in the Camelot system doesn't mean that, you know, it's not worth a try. Like, if you hear it in your head and it sounds good in your head, it's probably worth giving a try, even if, you know, like, you know, and this is the caution that I want to give you on any of these tools that we use in digital DJing, you know, the beat counters, you know, the visual things, whatever it is, you know, it always comes down to being in your ears. If it sounds right, um, if it sounds right in your head, you can probably make it happen on the decks. That's what all the other tools are for. Beat counters don't always work that well. My classic example of that is anything that's in like triplet times, like a 6/8. It's gonna tell you that your 126 beat per minute track is 95 or something. It doesn't do so well with syncopation, and so you know, of course, the classic way of counting your beats would be to put on your record and watch the second hand on your watch and count the number of beats in a minute. Um, you know, of course, the shortcut to that would be count beats for 15 seconds and multiply by 4, and it's close the fuck enough. It's close the fuck enough for vinyl, you know what I mean? Now we have these very precise counters that get kind of down into the hundredth decimal place, you know, for tempos. Again, I caution you that that those are not always accurate. and that you should trust your ears in all situations above any of the tools and visual things that you have at your disposal. And no dice on any of this stuff. Like, it's fucking great. Like, life is so much easier than carrying around big crates of records. You know what I'm saying? Um, but the caution is that it is always in your ears, and that these tools are merely just tools to help you make your decisions faster more than anything, um, and to help guide your decision making. And of course, before key analysis kind of things, if you didn't have a piano and some basic music training, you might not be marking your records by key. I did not, but I, even without, I even without that kind of notation or anything on it, um, it all comes down to your ears and does it sound good together. So, to talk a little bit further about what Tans Machina had brought up about, sort of the rising feeling from going up the Camelot numbers, going up the Camelot numbers, and the descending feeling or the deepening feeling coming from going, I guess you would call that counterclockwise around the circle of fifths. Um, the other thing about that too is that you can shift and create wonderful emotional shifts. So when Camelot first came out, I was kind of like, oh, that's neat. And I analyzed some of my previously recorded mixes, like the ones that I would put on CD. I used to give away CDs, man. It was like a really fucking fly thing to be able to do, right? Is hand out your DJ mix CDs in the 90s, right? And, and I analyzed a bunch of my sets, they're, 65, 70 minutes long or whatever. And I discovered that I have this kind of thing that I do naturally where I rise for a few tracks through the keys, and then I will do this thing where it's like, then I drop 5 on the Camelot scale, and I'm not really sure how that works out on the circle of fifths itself, but it's not one of the things that's in their recommended ways of playing. Um, but um, but it's like I discovered that all of these like really amazing moments where like the floor just falls out of my stomach when I get to, the frisson, right, the goosebumps in the mix, right, were these times where I had like gone up, gone up, gone up, dropped it down, and it just goes woomph, you know and it feels amazing. And I totally do that trick in the goth clubs too. I'm not always descending, but if I'm going down, 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 and then I do that trick going up, it works in the other way where it's like this amazing lift, right? Because you've been descending and then you hit that 5 on the Camelot wheel difference. You go suddenly up 5 from where you are. You're at 3 and you suddenly go to 8. Sorry about the puh 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 on the microphone there. It's like this really awesome, like, it's like it's like those hands up moments and people go woo. And so that's some other thoughts just on that whole using you the cue. Samuel says, every time I hear you saying match the beats, all I can think of is mix this song into A23's Maps of Reality. I can probably mix a lot of things into Maps of Reality. A23, Tom Shear is one of those cats that really understands good construction in a club song, and I'm not going to lie, he makes it pretty easy for us DJs. And if you take that skill plus the skill of actually good songwriting, then you get disappoint and stuff like that. Like where the DJs will keep on playing it and keep on playing it and keep on playing it because it gives us a lot of options for mixing. Um, well constructed club tracks, well constructed club remixes. Absolutely get your stuff played more. like, um, that said, one of the other things that we're going to talk about, um, Brian singing "It's Beat Match 101." Actually, Samuel, if before we move on from the topic, Beat Match 101. So I'm gonna give you the big secret here. The concept is very, very simple, and I'm gonna give you the big secret. What it really takes is a lot of practice to train your ears to do it well and to do it quickly. Right? When you first start learning how to beat match, it takes you the entire track to get your beats matched. Because haven't, because it takes you longer to hear it being off. What the more that you practice, and the more that, especially, this is another thing, DJs, practice, record your practice sessions, practice and record your practice sessions, practice and record your practice sessions, listen back, and be super critical of your work, and listen back, and really pay attention to how mixing sounds, because it sounds different in the headphones, um and the reason that I say this is because the beat matching gets easier and easier with practice, and what you're really doing is you're training your ears to hear the beats being off quicker, and which direction that they're off. Are they off slow or are they off fast? So here's the big secret, my friends. Here's the big secret to beat matching: bracketing. Right? You've got a track playing, it's roughly, say, 124 beats per minute. You've got another track, you've listened to it, you've looked at your watch, you've counted it off, and it's maybe 121 beats per minute. So you got to go a little faster, but it's not that much faster, right? So the pitch fader here, traditionally on turntables, and usually what I keep it set at on mine, is +8, -8. The nice thing is that we have key corrections, so you don't have to worry about the pitch changing, which I can talk about in a moment. But so you've got your one that's 124. You've got your one, it's a few beats per minute slower, so it's going to go a little faster. Well, if you push your pitch up about 3% or so, and then you start the track on, you're hitting it on the one beat, so you're listening to the right beats in the right place, the measures are lining up, and you're like, okay, well, what is it, going faster or is it going slower? Right? When it starts to train wreck, it starts to flam, it starts off like bop bop bop, and then it starts to drift. Which one's faster and which one's slower? And so if it's running faster, then it's between 0 and 3%. So go to the middle, 1.5%. Is it faster or slower? Well, now it's slower. So now that it's between 1.5 and 3%. So you go into the middle of that, and that's how you do it. Is you just bracket. You just kind of go, faster, slower, faster, slower, faster, slower. And when you get quite good at that, we'll use the pitch fader alone, not touching the turntables, not touching the keys or anything, and we'll be like shwabap, shwabap, and slow it down so that we're actually doing our dragging and goosing, speeding it up and slowing it down just by using the pitch fader, and then returning it to its position roughly, and sort of tweak, 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 wow, tweak, 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 and until you get it lined up. And that's how to do it without touching the fader. And I highly recommend practicing that. Just practice open faders, and grab a few tracks and throw them in, and kind of ignore all the tools and the visual feedback stuff. Just use your ears and bracket your mixes, bracket your beats, and that is the grand secret to beat matching. Like I said, it's really easy concept. What it takes is a lot of practice, because your timing has to be on. You have to get um, you have to get good at figuring out which way your beats are drifting. You have to get good at separating sounds in your ears. I had a head injury when I was a kid, so I'm actually deaf in my right ear. I only use my left ear. And so I had to get good at listening to two things with one ear. You can split it in your headphones if you have full stereo hearing. You can have, your cue in one ear and your program in the other ear. I do it all in one, and use the volume, the blend balance to, say like, okay, I want to hear the cue one more, I want to hear the program one more, I want to hear it like deeper into the mix, making sure that I'm on, and that kind of thing. And if anything, that's going to bring us around. I'm gonna lay this down real quick on the great sync debate. Like, I don't fucking care if you use sync. You know, right? Like, if you're beat matching, or if you're letting it beat match for you. Like, um a lot of people say the audience doesn't care if you're using sync. No, they don't care if you're using sync. What matters is that you're bringing a good performance to the audience. But and it's up to you to decide if that matters to you, I think. um like I think that if I want to be the best DJ that I can be, I need to train my ears to be able to do it without those tools. Um, that is how I feel about it. I don't use the sync stuff. That said, I learned how to do it without before it was available. I am not opposed to using that tool. Like, sometimes it's a handy tool. I get it. I don't need it. I have never been in a situation in which I would rather use sync. And a big part of that for me personally is that I want every iota of control over my machines. Like, it really just boils down to that. Like, I must be in control of the machines. That is how I am in control of my audience. I want to be able to adjust. I want to be able to, like, oh my god, like, not everything has to be a beat match. Which is something we're going to get to in a minute. Tans Machina, I know you're still waiting for me to get to that. But yeah, my opinion on the sync is that, I don't care if you use it. What matters is, do you care if you use it? You're the one who knows. And ultimately, the most important thing is bringing a great performance to your audience. I think that you will probably bring a better performance to your audience if you aren't relying on non-audio feedback. Like, DJing is music. And again, like I said, the visualizers and the tools and the beat detection and the key detection and all of those things are incredibly useful tools. They have made the job of DJing much lighter and in a lot of ways much quicker. And I think that's really what it boils down to, is they're not better, they're faster. They help you make decisions quicker, and that's all good. But what really matters is, what do you hear in your mind's ear? What do you hear before you go into the mix? Does it sound right in your mind? And then it's, how do I accomplish that on the decks? And that's what all the other tools are for. So beat matching 101, it's not a complicated concept. Bracketing, I steal the term for that from photography. Like back in the days learning film, and you'd use the light meter to figure out your basic exposure, and then you would bracket on either side of that exposure to get your creative effects, or to make sure that you had between the exposures one really good one. Um, and it's the same thing with beat matching, is you're just bracketing until you get it lined up, which sounds really easy until you try to do it. Like, you got a thought there, Diana?
I'm just laughing because I'll get there eventually.
Yeah, well, it is one of the things. Well, it takes a lot of practice, and boy, can you hear the neighbors yelling through the wall on the microphone? They're as loud as the frickin' train. Um, so, yeah, it does take a lot of practice, and of course, they're like, somebody's banging on the door out there. That's really distracting. I apologize. My ever thoughtful neighbors. um, you know, the toughest thing is not having gear. When I first started DJ, last week we were talking about how I DJ'd for the agency for like 5 years, kind of thing, in the beginning of my career, and that was how I really took off as a professional and learned my craft. And we had an equipment room at the agency, and I would go and I would set up in the equipment room and just spend a few hours practicing, and I'd go. And it was not a short drive. I lived on the South Shore, and it was on the North Shore, man. I mean, I was like driving from Quincy to Reading to do it. And then after I'd worked there for like a couple of years, they loaned me a system so that I could, and I set it up in my living room. Well, surprise, that's what this is my living room, right? It's my green screen studio. But yeah, practice at every opportunity is great. Now, the nice thing is that you can get going on DJing for a very low cost now. It's the price of entry has dropped quite a bit, and so there's very good and very inexpensive equipment. I mean, pretty much everybody has a laptop at this point. That's one of the bigger expenses, is really just having a laptop that's up to spec. Obviously, controllers with motorized platters and high professional level gear is more expensive. There's the thousands of dollars range. But there's also the $100-ish range. One of the tools that I have here is my DJ42, which is a miniature unit. Here, hold on. This one I'm going to show you is actually Diana's. She just hasn't come up to get it yet. So this little guy, they're like $90 on Sweetwater. And it's a very compact controller, but it's also quite powerful. So the thing that it really lacks is a mixing board. All you really have is a crossfader and a couple of gain knobs. But the size of it is about the same size as the dual decks. So back in the early days of CD DJing, it wasn't the tabletops. You had the control unit and then the drawer unit. It was on a remote cable, so you had the two drawers, and then you had the controller, the control unit, and it looked a lot like this. It was basically just your play, stop, eject, and but it had the little pitch faders and all that kind of thing. And so playing on that little guy is an awful lot like playing on the old dual deck, like Denon, dual deck 2000s, the 1800s, the 2000s, the all of those kind of things. And there were, of course, myriads of clones of those. Newmark and Gemini had clones of those, and they were all based on that same concept. And it's better than most of those. Especially, because you're using Serato now. Serato's a pretty powerful, it has become an incredibly powerful program, really. And keeps getting more powerful. But okay, so the other thing, so that how about that for a half an hour rabbit hole, just talking about last week's show, and the circle of fifths and mixing in key. So the other thing that Brian commented, Tansmachina commented on the note here, is something that I really wanted to talk about in the show today. He says, I usually get stun locked in a BPM loop. And oh boy, I get you. I get that. I totally do. Okay, so Diana, actually, this is we're going to talk a little bit about scatterbugging during this part of the conversation too. I know that's something that you wanted me to bring up.
Definitely.
Okay. So, BPM stun. Okay, so I would liken it to painting oneself into a corner, right? You're painting the floor, and then you discover that you're in the corner, and you've painted all around yourself, and you don't know where to go. Where do you go? Like, one of the hardest things about DJing is the hardest thing about DJing is picking the first fucking song. The other hardest thing about DJing is picking the next fucking song. When we are doing our sets, it is easy to get into a tempo that you are comfortable mixing in, where you have a lot of options, right? Because what you want when you're DJing is options. You want to be able to go in different directions based on how your audience is reacting. Dance music, it's I'm going to say this, like, I find it easy to get locked into a tempo and kind of hang there, for a while, because I'm coasting along just fine. And I'll say this, when you're doing like an hour long set, you don't have the same opportunity as, if you're doing a 4 or 5 hour set, to manipulate the tempos, and bring those peaks and valleys. All right, so one thing that I want to mention, DJ Spider, from North Carolina there, who I have great war stories about going on tour with Spider. Spider is a fucking trooper. They are a DJ that doesn't really beat match. They don't beat match. That's not their thing. They are totally vibing on the floor. I feel like my mic's getting a little squeaky there. They are totally vibing on the floor DJ. They're a party DJ. And when they do clubs, it's the same sort of thing. Now Spider, so this is kind of an older theory, and it's the kind of thing that you might have found in like Nightclub and Bar magazine kind of thing in the 90s or so, but it's not a bad one. And what they did was they had like this kind of BPM graph thing where, like, it's kind of like thou shalt not exceed 120 before 10 p.m. kind of thing or something, you know what I mean? Like, kind of starting off in lower tempos and building it up, and then dropping it down, and then building it up higher, and then dropping it down, and then building it up higher, and then dropping it down. until you're playing much faster stuff in sort of the late peak of the night, and then kind of dropping it down again and having a lower peak kind of thing. And that's, one of many potential models on how to, uh, I try to look at these things as more of a way of analyzing my sets rather than basing my sets on these kind of things. I want to make that very, very clear. Again, it's really about the gut. It's really about what feels right now to do, and learning to trust your instincts and developing. Well, developing your skills is developing your trust. Developing your trust with the dance floors and developing your trust in yourself. So as I said, DJ Spider will in their sets kind of work these rising, falling kind of peaks in their set. I do this too, but not in the same way. I like to use beat matching as a tool to go from one style or set of sounds to another, right? To find the commonalities, to bridge different things together. Um, uh, I think that my attention deficit is strong enough that I kind of don't like doing one thing for too long anyway. I like to kind of keep flipping and flipping and flipping, and we're going to get to scatterbugging in a second because that's part of it too. But so getting into that like BPM lot kind of thing where you're like, okay, I'm just kind of stuck at 125 beats per minute or whatever it is, because you have lots of options around there where you can run down a flow and that kind of thing. Well, so here are some things that you can do to break yourself out, to keep yourself from getting painted in a quarter. And so one of the things here is that dance music, a lot of dance music is designed to be mixed, right? We were talking about that a few minutes ago about Tom Shear and his excellent construction of club tracks, and so a lot of music is designed to be mixed, so it's like it stays in tempo, it's got the bonus beats, whatever it is. And so it's easy for you to keep finding another track that wants to be mixed at the end, because it goes out on beats and it goes out on beats and it goes out on beats, or it goes out on, a phrase that you can mix in over beats, and you want to mix it, and you want to mix it because it sounds good when you mix it. Because like you don't want to just like stop cold on a beat, like, boom 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 boom. That's cold, right? That's cold. You at least got to get on the microphone and like, fade out on the beats or something and be like, hey everybody, hi, everybody's having a good time, let's get sexy now, and and change the beat. So what I do is I look for songs that have a natural way out, and then try to put them together with songs that have a natural way in. And that way I can change a tempo, or I can change a flow. I can get myself out of this painted corner and start working on painting myself into a new corner until I find another track that I can break out of naturally, and something else that I can break into naturally. Now, what am I talking about? I'm talking about songs that go bump at the end. Songs that have a natural ending, or some of them they slow down. I've done that on one of my tracks even. So it's like boom, 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 boom. That's a great way to change tempo, because you can just pick it up on the next beat and be like shaboom, and do something totally different, right? Songs that have big endings. you know, any of that kind of stuff. Bow, rock and roll endings. You know, things that have natural endings to the songs, and a lot of them do. Ones that are designed for clubs, not so much. You know, when you're deep in your house music remixes, you're not going to find as many easy ways to break out. Oh crap! What do you do then? Play them at a different tempo, man. Like, you know, okay, like I feel like I'm kind of stuck at 125 beats per minute, and I'm looking at acres of music in front of me that kind of wants to do the same thing. Well, why not just start nudging that tempo up? You know, and I'll do it over, you know, 32 beats, or maybe there's a good break where it kind of wishes out for a second and then whooshes back in or something, and I'll take that moment and, you know, bump. I'm over here doing it. I'm bumping the pitch fader up, bumping it up. Towards me is up. That way is down. This way is up. The reason for that, by the way, is because that's the direction of the platter. That's how the motor is. So slowing it down is going against the motor. Speeding it up is going with the motor, and that is from, you know, using turntables like your Technics 1200s. And that is something that has traditionally remained the same through all of the iterations of CD and digital DJing and that kind of stuff, is that up is down and down is up. And the reason for that, again, is because you have motors that are going clockwise. So that way is counterclockwise, and this way is with the clockwise. So speeding up, slowing down. So yeah, so if I'm sitting on 125 beats per minute, well, maybe I'll bump that up so it's a, you know, a couple of percent higher. And you know, now I'm bumping it at 128 or something, and that changes how the song feels a little bit. Um, Speaking of turntables, there, I did say earlier that I was going to talk a little bit more about the pitch fader. The reason that we call it a pitch fader is because it's actually speeding up the platter or slowing down the platter. Um, on the digital systems, it's something that, you know, came in the 2000s during the CD era, was the key correction, so that you can change the tempo of the song without adjusting the pitch. It's like key locked, or you can turn that key lock off if you wish. And so on traditionally on turntables, you know, if you're playing on vinyl, there is no key lock, and so uh, you when you're DJing in that way, you're kind of trying to pick things that are closer in tempo to mix then, because you really don't want to exceed. Like my personal belief is that people really start to notice around like 2.3 2.5% or so. That's when they start to notice that you've changed the pitch of the record. Like if they know the song, they'll be like, that sounds a little pitchy, it doesn't quite sound like it's in the same key anymore. 4% is like, you know, you're definitely noticing. So one of the cool things about that, though, is that sometimes you'd take a record and you'd drop it like 6% and it would like modulate down a half step, or you pitch it up 6% and it would modulate up. But you'd be taking like a 128 beat per minute record and turning it into 120 much deeper groove, you know, or taking a slower song and turning it into a more upbeat, faster groove. It was a real good trick during the garage music days, garage music. You know, a lot of that stuff would modulate well on the turntables, and you could have fun taking these, you know, 128 poppy sounding tunes and then pitching them down 6% and getting these real deep soul groovy kind of sounds out of it. So continuing to talk about getting yourself out of a corner. This show goes by fast, Diana. We got all your audio and stuff going, and I've barely let you get a word in edgewise. So with about 15 minutes to go left on the show. Scatterbugging. Um, in my very early days of mobile DJing, one of the techniques that I learned and that I continue to teach to this day is scatterbugging. What does that mean? Okay. We are going down to your very basic mobile disco. You barely know your way around the gear. You've got a music library that you hardly understand, and you've got to go play to people who like to dance to music that you know you maybe don't even really know that well. Well, so here's what you're doing: is you're taking. All right, you got to get people onto the dance floor. Boom, you're opening your dance floor. What you want to do is you want to take what we'd call showstoppers, right, which are the songs that everybody knows. It's like the number one, I mean, like we're talking like the cliche hits, like what are you going to hear at a wedding? You're going to hear these songs, right? And you'd say, okay, you got 3 4 generations of people here. So you're going to take a big hit from like the 80s from new wave, and you're going to take like a big disco hit, and you're going to take like a more modern hit, and you're going to take like an 80s like dance hit, and you're going to take like a couple of oldies, like some 70s rock and roll thing or whatever, and you're going to put them all into a scatterbug set. And the idea there is that you're flipping genre, flipping genre, flipping genre, flipping genre, flipping genre. With every single song, you're changing genre, you're changing the decade, you're changing the genre, but you're trying to keep the flow, right? Um, and the reason that you're doing that is because you've never seen these people before in your life. And what it does is it gives you a read on the audience. What are they dancing hardest to? Right? If it's Motown, then okay, if I'm playing, if they're dancing to Super Freak and old time rock and roll harder than they're dancing to Love Shack or whatever, if they're getting the fuck down on Kool and the Gang, right? Then I know that if I play sort of that 70s soul and Motown and like stuff that's related to that, like the Rolling Stones, right, the British invasion stuff, the stuff that was influenced by those sounds, and then of course into the modern sort of thing, like they're probably gonna like Uptown Funk, you know what I mean? um oh boy, that kind of lends us to that article we were talking about earlier too, right? We'll hit that in a moment because that's a cool brain thing. But yeah, so scatterbugging the sets and like really flipping the genres, um, is a great way to get a read on an audience that you've never played before, and now to extrapolate that into like something like the clubs or whatever. Like if you're talking about um like your goth industrial dark scene kind of clubs, right? And you're playing to a room that you don't really know, like it behooves you to kind of do the same thing, like even when I was playing Ex Mortis recently, I scatterbug the shit out of my sets, and a little old, a little new, a little in between, like if you're asking for Sisters of Mercy, you'll probably like Black Angel, especially the na parts. They're asking me for old Sisters of Mercy. All right, we'll put in some old Sisters of Mercy and we'll mix it with the new Black Angel stuff that, if you like that, you'll like this. And that's scatterbugging, right? Do it all the time, and you don't have to go like super extreme on your mixing either or whatever, but not for nothing, I can mix fucking um ACDC with D-Light, you know what I mean? And it's two 80s hit songs that are going to have really different impacts on the audience. um, and you know, is gonna, like, you know, again, one of those things, like if their dancing to groove is in the heart, they're probably more likely to dance to Super Freak and Uptown Funk. You know what I mean? And so so scatterbug, now beat matching is also a good way to accomplish scatterbugging, right? Because sometimes you'll get a woo just because they didn't expect you to do that. um you know, mixing beat matching is a great way to find common elements between songs that are different. And so um uh you know, say going from, you know, like a modern clubby dark dance industrial tune or synth poppy tune into an old school rocker by, you know, by laying the melody of the old school tune onto the bonus beats of the new school tune, sounds fucking mint, right? And that's scatterbugging, right? Like, you know, use diversity to your advantage. Use diversity to your advantage, you know. If your intention is to play nothing but new music in your set for your Twitch show or something, by all means do that. You know, there's a lot of ways to get yourself out of painting. A lot of ways to keep from painting yourself in a quarter. Again, looking for those natural ways out. Um, you know, again, the other thing that I was saying before is like, keep your instead of like sitting on the same tempo, keep your tempos rising, and then you're building energy in the room. And then when you find something that gives you a natural out, where you're like, you know, I've been playing, like, you know, I started at 120 beats per minute and I've given it, you know, I've gone up and up and up and up in tempo with my selections, right? It's like, you know, I pick something that's a little faster and then I mix up to it, you know, or I mix it in a little bit slower and then raise it up to natural tempo, or a little faster, and then mix the next thing in a little slower and then raise it up and then raise it up, and keep raising my tempos and my selections. Then I'm going upward, and I can go from 120 to 136 beats per minute in an hour, and not miss a single beat match. You know, do this all the time, all the time. And that keeps you from getting into BPM stun, where you're doing the same thing over and over. Use diversity, use diversity, use diversity to your advantage. Change up what you're doing. You know, use the tricks, you know, use that mixing in key, use your Camelot or whatever, you know, to give the rise and fall emotionally. You know, you can just sit in the same tempo and do that with key. You know, like emotionally, you can sit on the same, you can be at 128 beats per minute for an hour and take an audience on a journey. That's another thing, we do it all the time. And that's using key and rhythm, you know, to do that. You can sit in the same genre for an hour at the same tempo and take an audience on a journey. You know, the trance DJs were brilliant at that. Like, listen to the old Paul Van Dyke stuff and whatever. You know, that's literally what they were doing, is taking you on a journey with key, with a bunch of stuff that was designed to sound cohesive together. Let's see. With just a few minutes left, you know, I think we're probably going to have to save this whole IFL article. So it's an older article from 2018 on I fucking love science, which I follow because I do fucking love science. And it popped through on my feed recently, and it's the article that that says musical discovery peaks. It's around age 24, 24 and a half, I guess, is the average. And it goes on to tell us that our musical taste is most influenced at 11 to 14 years of age or so. And I I do think that is going to be an interesting topic that will probably get going on next week, because it also relates to what we were talking before about the scatterbugging and musical histories that we were talking about last week, and how we build those in our minds. And of course, like if we understand how these things have affected us, then we can understand how they affect other people, and that is again how we gain more control over our audience when we're DJing. Interesting stuff. It's that puppet master shit. It's that puppet master shit. Diana will confirm when I say that, like, you know, I'll be doing gigs that she's at, and she's hanging out in the DJ booth, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this thing, and this is what's gonna happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep.
Like, wait for it. But that's what I'm here to tell you all about on Musically Minded. You know, it's a peek behind the curtain, and you know, a bit of explanation about why I make the decisions that I do as a DJ. Of course, been doing it a long time. And yeah, so Tans Machina, Brian, you've managed to spark the conversation of this entire show with your message to me, and so many thanks for that. And I do hope that that this conversation, this one-sided conversation that I've been having with myself here, has has been of some help. And of course, to anybody else out there who's doing this beautiful fucking thing that we do, this magical thing that we do, which is DJing, and as music lovers as well, and being musically minded, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's we've got just a couple of moments left here, or just a few more minutes. You're very welcome, Tans Machina. Thank you. And thank you all for joining us. Everybody popping up in the chat there. And I love the comments, and I love the questions. I love talking about this shit, obviously. I love having Diana here with me to do it. DJD42, your hostess assist with the most assist. I think next week she's actually going to be in that. Are you going to come up for New Year's?
Yes. Yes.
All right, cool. So yeah, next week when we're doing the spooky New Year's Eve, DJD42 will be in the house. We'll be doing Musically Minded in the same room, but still in our separate TVs. And on Saturday night, we've got DJ Loki joining us remotely for that set from slightly warmer, but not a hell of a lot warmer, Florida right now. And 2 weeks from now, into the new year, Saturday night, Syrinx will be joining us for the Retro Rumpus. And Wednesday, this very Wednesday, we've got an artist spotlight with Aesthetic Perfection on MTV TV. Conversation with Daniel Graves, and lots of awesome videos. Some videos that we don't have on the channel yet. We're getting some special videos for y'all for that set too. Diana, am I forgetting anything else?
Your Patreon.
Oh shit, yeah. That's kind of an important one. Of course, the thing that we want you to do most is support MTV TV on Patreon. But if you can support my Patreon as well, ADDAMBOB, I can't even do it myself anymore. ADDAMBOMBB, all over the internet and on Patreon too. And you can ask me questions over there, of course. And obviously, I don't mind if you send me a message over on Facebook. And always feel free to ask your questions in the chat here during Musically Minded. And if I don't get to it during this show, during that particular show, we can always talk about it on the next one. And I think we've hit our time limit on this. We're hitting 3 o'clock. And so, are we going to raid over to MTV TV today?
I
Is
think
that
that
what
would
we're
be
doing?
good. Otherwise, DJ David Craddock.
Oh yeah, David's on. We could go over. Yeah, why don't we do that? Let's take everybody over to visit David. And all right. And on that note, then I should probably get us over to Curtin here. We'll say goodbye. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you, Diana, for being here and for trying to keep me on track and for looking stuff up and all that. Like I said, next week we'll kind of take things off from where we're leaving it here and talk about the IFL Science article. That looks really cool, and we'll keep talking about all of the things that you guys want to talk about. Becca J. Flower, oh, you're just catching us now. This one's only an hour long. We only do 2 to 3 on Sundays. But hey, you know what? It's going to be on YouTube later. We'll be putting it up on my YouTube, and and you can probably rewatch it over on Facebook too. We are multicasting to Facebook right now too. Thanks for jumping in though, and hang out because I think let's go ahead and raid over to DJ Craddock, and on that note, goodbye and thank you again. Uh-oh, David's not live. Well, if David's not live, then we're gonna go over to MTV TV then. All right.